Concorde 045, you have flames behind you.
Roger.
You are looking at the beginning of the end. On the runway, the Concorde, the fastest, most advanced passenger plane ever built, is fighting a losing battle against physics and fire. Inside the cockpit, Captain Christian Marty, well, he's past the point of no return. He cannot stop. He has to fly. He has 109 souls on board. He has failing engines, and he has exactly 120 seconds left before the supersonic dream crashes back to Earth. How did the world's safest aircraft turn into an inferno in mere seconds? The answer lay waiting on the runway, and it was smaller than a ruler. July 25th, 2000. Paris, Charles de Gaulle Airport. The time is 4:44 p.m. On the runway, a machine representing the pinnacle of human engineering is attempting to defy gravity. But this time, gravity is about to win. Let's rewind a few hours before this catastrophe. That morning was sunny. The aircraft parked on the apron, tail number FBTSC, didn't look like the protagonist of a disaster movie. It shone like a work of art. In the aviation world, they called her the White Bird. She was the pride of Air France, and that day, she was preparing for a routine flight to take 100 passengers to the other side of the Atlantic, to New York. At least, that's what everyone thought. To understand the magnitude of what was lost, you must first understand the Concorde. This aircraft was a child of the Cold War, the space race, and boundless optimism. It could fly at twice the speed of sound, Mach 2, faster than a rifle bullet. It flew so fast that the friction heat would cause the fuselage to expand, stretching the aircraft by nearly 30 centimeters mid-flight. Built with 1960s technology, even in the year 2000, it still looked like it had arrived from the future. There was simply nothing else on Earth that could rival it. The passengers that day were no ordinary travelers. The majority were wealthy tourists from Mönchengladbach, Germany. For many, this was the dream vacation they had saved for all their lives. Their plan was magnificent. First, a 3.5-hour supersonic flight to New York, then boarding the luxury cruise ship, the MS Deutschland, to sail the Caribbean. Tickets cost about $15,000 in today's money. Champagne corks were popping, souvenir photos were being taken. No one knew these would be their final photos. Control of the aircraft was in safe hands. Captain Christian Marty, 54 years old, one of the most experienced names in the sky. Marty wasn't just a pilot, he was an adventurer. He had made history in 1982 as the first person to windsurf across the Atlantic Ocean. He knew how to battle the elements, how to manage risk. As he ran the final checks in the cockpit with First Officer Jean Marcotte, everything seemed in order. The very waters Marty had once surfed across were now waiting to flow beneath the Concorde. But fate had already begun to weave its invisible web. Just before takeoff, a minor technical issue was detected in the number 2 engine. The thrust reverser system wasn't fully operational. Captain Marty, never one to compromise on safety, requested a repair. This decision delayed the flight by about an hour. That single hour was the breaking point of the story. Because while the Concorde waited in the hangar, a Continental Airlines DC-10 taxied onto the runway. As that plane took off, a small metal strip, 43 centimeters long and made of titanium, broke off its engine cowl and fell onto the tarmac. That small piece of metal lay there on the asphalt, like a landmine waiting for its approaching prey. The clock is ticking. At 4:38 p.m., 5 minutes before the Concorde is due to depart, a Continental Airlines DC-10 takes off from the same runway, runway 26 right. It seems like a normal departure, but as it roars down the tarmac, a small piece of maintenance work fails. A wear strip, a piece of metal attached to the engine cowl, breaks loose. It falls onto the asphalt and settles there. It is 43 centimeters long, it is made of titanium alloy, and most importantly, it should not be there. Titanium is harder than the rubber of an aircraft tire. Much harder. 4:42 p.m. The Concorde lines up. Captain Christian Marty receives clearance for takeoff. The 4 Rolls-Royce Olympus engines scream to life. These are military-grade engines, equipped with reheat. Afterburners designed to push the plane through the sound barrier. The raw power is immense. Inside the cabin, the passengers feel the familiar pushback into their leather seats. The velocity builds 100 knots, 150 knots. The aircraft is heavy. It is loaded with 95 tons of fuel, filled to the brim for the transatlantic crossing. It is accelerating past 300 kilometers per hour. At this speed, the runway is a blur. The pilots cannot see a small gray strip of metal on the gray asphalt. It is physically impossible. At 4:43 p.m. and 13 seconds, the front right wheel of the left landing gear runs directly over the titanium strip. The reaction is instantaneous and violent. The titanium acts like a knife. It shreds the tire. A massive chunk of rubber weighing nearly 4.5 kilograms is flung upwards. It misses the landing gear bay. Instead, it strikes the underside of the left wing. It hits with the force of a cannonball. This is the critical moment that baffled investigators for months. The rubber did not punch a hole in the wing. Instead, the impact was so hard that it created a hydrodynamic shockwave inside the fuel tank. Imagine hitting a water balloon with a baseball bat. The skin didn't break where it was hit. It burst open from the inside due to the pressure. Fuel tank number 5 ruptures. Jet A1 fuel begins to gush out at a staggering rate of 100 liters per second. A literal river of kerosene is now spraying into the airstream. The fuel mixes with the turbulent air behind the wing, creating a highly flammable mist. Then, inevitably, comes the spark. Whether it was a severed electrical wire or the sheer heat of the engine bay, the result is the same: ignition. A massive plume of fire erupts under the left wing. The Concorde is now a flying torch, and it hasn't even left the ground yet. 100 knots. V1 speed is approaching. At this exact moment, the pilots cannot see the fire. They only feel a thud, the tire exploding. But the sensors know. Inside the cockpit, the dashboard lights up like a Christmas tree. But Captain Marty faces a nightmare scenario. The plane is moving too fast to stop safely, but it is damaged. If he aborts now, the 185-ton fuel-filled jet will overrun the runway and explode. If he takes off, he takes the fire into the sky. He has less than a second to decide. He pulls the stick back. The Concorde leaves the ground.
Concorde 4590, you have flames behind you.
The horror is visible to everyone on the ground. A tail of fire, 60 meters long, is trailing the aircraft. The fuel leaking from Tank 5 is burning at a temperature of thousands of degrees. It is melting the aluminum wing structure from the outside in. Flight engineer Gilles Giardino sees the warning lights for engine number 2. It's on fire. He shuts it down. Now the Concorde is climbing on only 3 engines. Then, the second stroke of bad luck. The pilots try to retract the landing gear to streamline the plane and gain speed. It's jammed. The explosion of the tire has damaged the gear doors. The landing gear remains stuck in the down position. This is catastrophic. The landing gear acts like a massive air brake. It creates drag. The Concorde, which needs speed to survive, is now bleeding energy. Heavy, burning, and dragging its legs, the white bird is struggling to fly. Engine 1 starts to lose power. It is ingesting the hot gas and debris from the fire next to it. The plane is now flying on essentially two engines. It cannot accelerate. It cannot climb. It is trapped at a terrifyingly low altitude, just 200 feet off the ground. Inside the cockpit, the alarms are deafening. The stall warning begins to blare.
Stall. 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 Stall.
The fire is now burning through the control surfaces on the left wing. The elevons, the flaps used to steer, are literally melting away. The plane begins to bank uncontrollably to the left. Captain Marty fights with superhuman effort. He tries to keep the wings level. He knows he cannot make it to Le Bourget Airport, which is just a few miles away. The cockpit voice recorder captures the final, heartbreaking realization.
The airspeed, it's not climbing.
Too late. No time.
He realizes the aircraft is going down. Below him is the town of Gonesse. To avoid crashing into the populated center, he tries to keep the nose up to guide the dying beast toward an open area. At 4:44 p.m. and 31 seconds, less than 2 minutes after takeoff, gravity wins. The Concorde stalls, rolls onto its back, and crashes into the Hotelissimo Hotel in Gonesse. 100 passengers, 9 crew members, and 4 people on the ground. 113 lives are extinguished in an instant. The crash was so violent that the seismographs in Paris registered the impact. The smoke rising from Gonesse signaled more than just a tragedy. It signaled the end of an era. Silence returned to Gonesse, but it was a heavy silence. The Hotelissimo was gone. The Concorde was unrecognizable. French investigators from the BEA arrived immediately. Their job was daunting. The aircraft had disintegrated. But amidst the charred wreckage, they found the 2 most important witnesses, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. The data told a confusing story. The engines were functioning until the very end. The pilots did everything right. So why did the plane catch fire on the ground? The answer wasn't at the hotel. It was back at the airport. The investigation team walked the entire length of runway 26 right. They were looking for foreign object debris, or FOD. They found chunks of the Concorde's water deflector. They found pieces of the burst tire. And then, they found the intruder. A jagged strip of metal, about 43 centimeters long. It didn't belong to the Concorde. It was an alien object. When forensic experts matched the shape of the metal to the cut found on the exploding tire, it was a perfect fit. They had found the murder weapon. Now, they needed to find the killer. Radar logs and departure times pointed to one suspect, Continental Airlines Flight 55, a DC-10 heading to Newark, which had taken off just 5 minutes earlier. Investigators traveled to the U.S. to inspect that plane. The evidence was damning. The wear strip on the engine cowling was missing. But here is the crucial detail that turned a mistake into a crime. The mechanic had used titanium instead of the standard stainless steel aluminum. Titanium is incredibly hard. If it had been soft aluminum, the Concorde's tire might have just crushed it. But titanium fought back. It sliced the tire open. An unauthorized repair had doomed 113 people. However, aviation disasters are rarely caused by a single thing. This was the Swiss cheese model in effect. The holes aligned perfectly. Conspiracy theorists and defense lawyers argued that the plane was slightly overweight with baggage. They argued that a spacer was missing from the Concorde's landing gear, causing the wheel to wobble and drift. They blamed the wind. But the BEA's final report was clear. Yes, the plane was heavy. Yes, there were maintenance issues on the Concorde too. But without that piece of titanium on the runway, Flight 4590 would have landed safely in New York. The strip was the trigger. The legal battle lasted much longer than the flight. It turned into a war between France and America. In 2010, A French court found Continental Airlines and one of its mechanics criminally responsible for manslaughter. It was a historic verdict, a corporate entity blamed for a crash caused by a piece of debris. Although an appeals court later overturned the criminal conviction, the civil liability remained. And a sloppy maintenance job in Houston ended the supersonic era in Paris. The lesson was written in blood. In aviation, there is no such thing as a small mistake. After the crash, the entire Concorde fleet, both French and British, was grounded. The Queen of the Skies sat silent in hangars for over a year. Engineers worked tirelessly to fix the fatal flaw. They installed bulletproof Kevlar liners inside the fuel tanks to prevent shockwave ruptures. Michelin developed new, high-tech radial tires that wouldn't explode upon impact. They spent millions of dollars to make the plane safer than ever. They were ready to fly again. But while they were fixing the plane, the world outside was breaking apart. The Concorde was scheduled to return to service in late 2001, but on September 11th, the Twin Towers fell. The aviation industry faced its darkest hour. When the Concorde finally landed in New York in November 2001, it landed in a city that was mourning. The global economy had crashed. The wealthy businessmen who used to pay $15,000 for a ticket were now flying on private jets, or not flying at all. The crash in Paris had wounded the Concorde, but the events of September 11th killed the market it relied on. The plane was flying half empty. In April 2003, Air France and British Airways made the heartbreaking announcement. The Concorde would be retired. Maintenance costs were rising. Passenger numbers were falling. The numbers just didn't add up anymore. In October 2003, the final commercial flights took place. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered around airports just to catch a glimpse of the white bird one last time. Grown men cried. It wasn't just a plane retiring. It felt like humanity was giving up on a piece of magic. Today, if you want to fly from London to New York, it takes 7 hours. We have gone backward. We traded speed for efficiency. We traded magic for economics. The crash of Flight 4590 was a tragedy of chain reactions. A loose strip of metal, a burst tire, a fire, and 113 lost lives. But the true legacy of that day in Paris is silence. The supersonic boom is gone. And looking at the sky today, one has to wonder, will we ever fly that fast again? Will we ever see a successor to the Concorde, or is the golden age of supersonic travel gone forever? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. For more aviation mysteries, don't forget to subscribe. Fly safe.